What's the plan, Stan? Not a rhetorical question posed by a folk singer, but a serious one asked by the BLM and the Forest Service every time they refine their long-range goals for public lands, as required by federal law. For years, the term Resource Management Plan, or RMP, has been almost exclusively the moniker of a federal long-range land use plan, and has been the sole document guiding the use of public land. But now, there are new plans in town, thanks to a bill introduced in 2015 by Representative Kevin Stratton. The hope is that they will add a new voice to the chorus of land planning. Rhea gets us started in the basics.
Federal land has lots of plans with lots of acronyms. MLP, Master Leasing Plan, TMP, Travel Management Plan, AMP, Allotment Management Plan, and the holy grail of plans, the RMP, Resource Management Plan. This is the main planning document that a BLM field office develops and revises about every 20 years or so to determine how public land is to be used or protected. It's supposed to look at activities on the land, their impact, consider the finite resources and how to allocate them, determine the best use of each acre of land, and whether multiple activities can coexist while making sure the land is sustainable. It's the foundation for all other planning documents within the BLM. If the transportation plan is not consistent with the RMP, then it has to be modified. The same is true with grazing, mineral leasing, and so on. The RMP creates the framework of a complex set of land use regulations that govern access, use, protection, and enjoyment of public land. So, if all other BLM planning has to be consistent with the Resource Management Plan, what does the RMP have to be consistent with? Well, for one, other superseding plans from other federal agencies. You know, dealing with endangered species or clean air and water. But equally important is the local land use plan developed by local governments. The U.S. Code Section 43 clearly states that the BLM must coordinate the land use, inventory, planning, and management activities with other federal agencies and with state and local governments. It concludes by saying, land use plans of the Secretary under this section shall be consistent with state and local plans to the maximum extent possible. So how does the BLM coordinate if a county or state does not have their own resource management plan to coordinate with? That's a real good question. Enter HB 323. It was passed in 2015 and requires counties to develop detailed, data-driven resource management plans to be part of their general plans. The state provided assistance and funding to get the kind of detailed data that the BLM would understand and appreciate. These county plans were then used to shape the state resource management plan, so that there would be one consistent state and local vision about future multiple use on federal land consistent with the desires of Utahns. It has taken 3 years to get it done, but the job is complete and just in time, as new federal land planning is taking place. 2 former monument designations are in the planning process right now, along with 2 national forests. So how will the federal government react to these new official local plans? Chad will discuss that next on The County Seat. I'm Rhea Rossi Booth.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher and the Tushers Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, ghost towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse races, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about county resource management plans, how they fit into the big federal picture of land planning on public lands. As a lot of the counties in the state are a majority of federally controlled lands, it's becomes a really important issue. Joining us for a conversation is the county level perspective, Jim Matson, a very active commissioner from Kane County, joining us. Thanks for making the trip again, Jim.
You bet.
And from the State Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office, that is a mouthful,
Yes, it is.
Redge Johnson, who is the liaison to guys like Jim around the state. Reg, thank you for joining us for this conversation. What is the distinction between just cooperating with a public land agency and coordinating with them? Some people would not see a difference.
You know, in any kind of an effort that goes on in terms of land management planning with the federal agencies, Forest Service and BLM, you know, there's a set of processes in place, and most of those have shown up as primarily as cooperating agencies, as if the two agencies themselves will cooperate with each other. But there are some sidebars on that limit, you know, what you might possibly be able to accomplish in that setting. And with us in our county, we're strongly committed to these resource plans that have just recently started to develop and evolve over time. And with that, we intend to be coordinating our resource objectives directly with the federal agencies and being able to work in both environments and bring them together or separate them apart as we need to be able to get to the objectives that we want and require.
So, Reg, without what was it, House Bill 323, right, that set this up, without 323 that passed a couple of years ago in the legislature, would counties like Jim's actually be able to get into this coordinating posture with a federal agency?
So there were a couple of counties that had done this prior to HB 323, but this was the first time a state has done it with all counties in the state and then used those county plans to help develop a state resource management plan. So under the Federal Lands Policy Management Act, or FLPMA, it does offer the states certain rights, or local governments. You have state, local, and tribal lands that if they have approved resource management plans, then these federal agencies are supposed to be as consistent as possible under the law with those approved resource management plans. So it gives us an extra weight when we're in discussions with BLM or Forest Service if we have these plans in place. And this process was attempted twice before, once under Governor Rampton and once under Governor Leavitt. But this was the first time we've been able to bring it to fruition and get all 29 counties and all 29 counties to develop a plan plus the state plan in place.
Does that funding and these resource management plans with data behind them, does that make them more compelling for the federal agencies to have to perform to what the county is seeking if they're coordinating with them?
It certainly makes it stronger when we're making our arguments with them versus it being just the opinions of a county or the opinions of a state. To actually have data behind it really helps, and we're seeing some good results as the fact that we've gone through that process and gathered the data, I believe.
Yes, and also at county level, that opportunity to identify what those elements are and the opportunities are has helped us fine-tune where our focus is going to be. Without that, I don't think we'd be looking at that to the degree that we can now.
Jim makes a great point there in that the county plans are very local and specific, and the state plan is more overarching.
Do these plans actually help confront conflicting policies with the federal agencies? Are they more bound to listen to you with a good data-driven resource management plan when you say, we want to do this, our plan says this, we've adopted it, the state's adopted it, and you're going the other direction?
We think it does. There's an opportunity for agencies at all levels, so the local level, the state level, and the federal level, to identify where we can all work together on those issues. And if we have the data driven behind it, it does help. And sometimes it helps the federal agencies to do what they would like to do, but for one reason or another they may be tied to a certain policy or a certain regulation. We can say, hey, look, at the local level, we would like these beetle kill trees taken care of for safety, health, safety, and welfare of the citizens, for our watershed, for things like that. And so we're able to push projects through to fruition that maybe you wouldn't be able to otherwise.
So there's one other element of FLTMA that we haven't really talked about. We've talked about, you know, coordinating, cooperating, but there's also consistency. Can you kind of clear the air on what a consistency element is in FLTMA?
Sure. So the three things that you have are cooperating agency, which is a formal process that we go through where we sign up as a cooperating agency, then we are able to work with them early and often, we hope. Then coordination is an ongoing process where with these plans we go through. And then consistency review is where we have these local and state plans. As much under the law as possible. They're supposed to be as consistent as possible under the law, I think is how the language goes. So with that, if our resource management plans, either at the county or state level, says that we would like to have a beetle kill infestation taken care of within 6 months after identification of the, so that's very consistent. And sometimes you don't see that in the federal side as a time frame being put to it. They want to take care of the beetle, but there's not always a time frame. So sometimes we're able to speed up, say, hey, our plan says this, we want you to be consistent and have that beetle kill problem taken care of within a specific time. So that's how we help move some of these projects along. Please be consistent with what our plans say. And we're seeing a lot more willingness of the federal agencies to work with us on those consistency issues. But that's the consistency side part of it.
I think the dangling opportunity is timeliness too of these actions. You know, as you mentioned, a beetle kill process or a fire and a fire salvage afterwards. Let's deal with those things as rapidly as we can instead of just hanging around waiting for some budget element to show up that drives it 3 or 4 years in the future, and the values are all gone and messed up. So.
Are there situations in the past, I'm going to have some come to mind, I don't know if they're applicable or not, but I look at the horse situation in the West Desert. I look at Dixie Mountain and the beetle kill and the resultant fire. I look at the revegetation at Mill Flat. I look at all these different things that have happened with fires, with resource degradation, with these time frames that have all been heavily litigated. Sage grouse, there's another big one. Had this been in place, would this have made these situations different on the ground today than they are now?
I absolutely think they would. In fact, to the point that where if we can jointly set priorities on how to deal with this, you know, the WRI efforts that have gone on, you know, with the habitat and landscape-based treatments that are out there treating that large bunch of, or that whole biomass mess that's out there, by having targets and objectives set, we can move forward in that direction. We're also partners in that process, so we're not completely dependent upon the federal budget to get that stuff done, so we can do those things jointly.
I agree with that. There are some challenges. You brought up wild horses. That's one of them. There are some things where this is going to work really well for us to speed up this process and to get the projects done. There are some, like the wild horse issue, where that's a congressional rider that's on that, and that's kind of what's slowing it up, not so much BLM not wanting to take care of it, but some of the constraints that they have. So there are gray areas in there that we have to work through. But if we have the language in these plans, I think it will help in the long run, and it might actually help put some pressure on Congress to take care of some of these issues. So.
Can you force them to redirect their funding? If you're saying, we got to deal with this beetle kill in 6 months, and they're saying, well, we don't have the funding for it, and you say, yeah, but this is in our plan, you got to be consistent, is that going to make them shuffle things around?
I think so. You know, we can also offer up funds, you know, to help augment that process, but I think we can start to target that and have that taken care of in that fashion.
What does somebody sitting in Sandy, Utah, in their living room watching this right now, who doesn't really, you know, have one bat of the eye thought about a county resource management plan, what should they take away that's relevant to them?
To me, I think they ought to take away the thought that there is a process in place at the county level that will help deal with those landscape opportunities and what we have to do in terms of protection and opportunities as we move forward. So it just isn't a big gray or a white hole. It's going to have something in it, you know, that we can work on.
I think one of the things they need to be aware of, the CUP project brings water from the Uinta Mountains all the way to the Wasatch Front. So they should be concerned about the forest health in the Uintas, even though it's not in their county, about how that could affect their water and the delivery of those waters. Also for recreation. A lot of these folks like to go down and recreate in those areas and those roads, whether they're RS 2477 roads or, you know, the Hole in the Rock roads and RS 2477 road. A lot of these plans identify those areas that they want to have recreation in, or they want these roads to be open for recreation. So there's a lot of things that impact the urban Wasatch Front that are identified in these plans, and we want the best health of the ecosystem out there while also protecting the economies of the rural areas.
Gentlemen, good point. Thank you so much for the conversation. We're going to take a break from the county seat. When we come back, the deed has been done. The resource management plans have been completed. But just how much work did it take to make that happen? We'll find out when we come back on the ground.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
There's more to life than the 9 to 5. There's more to experience than rush hour traffic. And there's more to see than the view from your window. In Davis County, we have over 500 miles of trails to satisfy the most avid bikers and hikers, taking you beyond the ordinary and into a natural world. Pick up your free trails and bikeways maps at any bike shop or city office in Davis County and discover what you've been missing. Davis County, Utah. Eat, stay, play. Learn more at playindavis.com.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
When a field office undertakes a new RMP, they have dozens of experts and planners who spend years delving into law, science, data, and opinions to come up with a final plan. The score they compose has lots of voices singing their own tune. So how do individual counties add the tracks that harmonize with the symphony without the needs of locals being drowned out by the chorus? Well, we look at that process right now on the ground.
Well, San Juan County is the largest county in Utah, and it includes approximately 5.1 million acres of land. My name is Nick Sandberg, and I work for San Juan County in the planning capacity, which involves coordination with federal agencies. The resource management plans were required by law that Utah legislature passed, I think, in 2015 and 2016, and that required each county to prepare a resource management plan which would be a component of the county master or general plans. And the legislation required that the counties include 28 resources. The list of 28 resources basically was everything from air, water, soil, the various uses or activities on lands, whether it's livestock grazing, mining, recreation, tourism, and that sort of thing. Main objective of the resource management plan was to prescribe management that the county would want to see on federal lands, and in this case, those were defined as BLM and Forest Service lands. The resource management plan does not apply to National Park Service lands, to private lands, reservation lands, or state lands. We do see the agencies referencing the county documents in their National Environmental Policy Act or environmental assessment documents and the decisions that are made there. And I think they reference and they try to coordinate with the county and to make their actions consistent with the county's plans to the extent they're allowed by their laws and regulations. The county has only 8% of the county is private lands, and roughly 62% of the county are federal lands, being the Forest and Park Service and BLM lands. The County Resource Management Plan is more or less, you could say, bridging the gap between local planning and federal planning, in that the federal agencies are required and appear to be giving more emphasis to local needs, whether it's social, economic, or what have you. So the County Resource Management Plan will be that basic textbook or that go-to document that the federal agencies can use to try to be consistent with the federal planning and the local planning to the degree allowed by law and regulation.
It does seem that as of the last few months, federal planners are opening the textbook and taking notes with the requests they are making about local planning documents. I'll be back with some final thoughts in just a minute.
Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. Look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Welcome back to the county seat. Here's my 2 cents worth on RMPs. Did your mom ever give you the advice that if you don't speak up, how will anyone ever know what you want? That might apply here. When House Bill 323 was first passed, I recall talking to more than one county official across the state who were not in favor of being forced to develop a plan. Now, I don't know if they were unsure of the cost or the effort, or if they just had a sense of developed futility because of their pleas about land use had fallen on deaf ears in the past. Now, it could have been that in the case of many rural counties, they had seen the kind of detailed evidence that had been collected by nonprofit organizations, which must have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to compile, and they felt like they did not have the resources to develop that kind of data. I'm also sure that there was a great deal of wariness about the state creating another unfunded mandate that would require the county to do something and then the state failing to adequately cover the cost of it being done. A highway of good intention is paved with bricks of state non-reimbursement. But I think more than any of those, it was an uncomfortable chore for a county to proactively think through what they wanted to do with resources over the span of, say, a couple of decades. Might require them to bring into focus some things that they would rather ignore. But presenting detailed data and specific planning documents in a language that the BLM natively understands, with the knowledge that they're required to be consistent with those plans, takes other players in the planning game and moves them to the back row at the table, behind the interests of local communities. The law clearly states it, and the BLM knows it. If they are living by the mandates of Title 43, the code that implements FLTMA, they should cheerfully pursue those plans in earnest. As Redge Johnson said in our discussion today, at first blush, it seems to be working. Now, I know that I'm going to get some flack for what I'm about to say, but here goes. Could it possibly be that we are not communicating our desires in the official bureaucratic language of the BLM? And as a result, we thought, as local communities, that we were being ignored. However, in reality, it might be that just we weren't understood. If we're going to win at the land planning game, we need to be able to speak to the umpire. I hope they're listening, because there's a lot of work to be done right now. That's my 2 cents worth for today. You know, you could really help us continue the message of the county seat by giving a personal thumbs up to your local county officials about our program. You could also do your part in getting our dialogue out there by following us on as many of our social media platforms as you can, and sharing the elements of these shows to your friends. Now, if you believe that local government is important, you can be a big part in helping us share that idea with the world. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube, and we would welcome your comments there as well. That's our show for this week. We'll look for you next week on the County Seat.